Good morning, everyone. Today I want to talk about comparisonitis, which I assume a lot of you are familiar with. I mean, I know I'm familiar with it. The whole idea that everyone is better than me, so why even bother? So first, I want to say that it isn't necessarily a bad thing to compare yourself to others, but it can become like if you go overboard there, it can become a really ugly thing. And I would say it can even stop you from creating altogether. And that is, of course, something that we have to watch out for. So this is why I want to talk about comparisonitis today. So basically, as I said, as some of you know, I'm doing this October kind of a challenge on creativity and Samhain, so that we can uncover our limiting beliefs around creativity and rewrite them into beliefs that are much more aligned and productive with who we are and where we want to go. And the idea is to burn the negative, the old ones, the limiting ones down on the 31st of October. So you can still join us. But one of the things that came up there is to believe that, why even bother if you're never going to be the next J.K. Rowling, if you're never going to be the next Ernest Hemingway, if you're never going to be the next Stephen King, if you're never going to be the next Stieg Larsson, whoever you're a really big fan of, why bother? Why bother creating if you're not going to be as good as they are? So I have a few points for you, and I hope they're helpful. First of all, what I want to say is you never know. You absolutely never know how good your writing is or can be in the future. You might turn out to be a better writer than these people. And instead of using the fear of not becoming good enough as they are, you could also use it as a challenge to keep becoming better at the craft. You can take that as a, let's see what I can do. So that's one of the things. You never know. You don't know. And also, you're not really the judge of that. Your readers are the judge of that. So being afraid you'll never be as good as them is really not an issue. It is really not an excuse not to try it anyway. Second point I want to make is that not everyone likes the same authors. Not everyone reads the same books. And shocking as it may be, not everyone likes Harry Potter. Not everyone has read Harry Potter. I know it's awful. No, just kidding. But tastes do differ. And that's why why there are so many different authors and why all these authors have such vast different audiences. And there will be someone out there who prefers your voice over that of someone else. So that too is not an excuse to not put your voice out there. We want to hear your voice. And even if I turn out not to want to hear your voice, it doesn't mean that my neighbor doesn't want to hear your voice. They might fall in love with your voice on the first page. There's someone out there. There's someone out there who will be really happy that you finished that book. And you have to trust that. So keep going. If this is bothering you, if this particular belief is bothering you. Another point I want to make is that those writers that you look up to, they don't write these good books consistently. And I think we all know that. I think we all know that, but we don't always sit with that. There are so many people who are like, yeah, this book by Stephen King is great, this one sucks, this one's great again, this one's not so good. Almost everyone I know says Stephen King sucks at writing endings, but they still want to become Stephen King. Same with J.K. Rowling. People who love her Harry Potter books don't necessarily love her other stuff. Some people love her other stuff and not the Harry Potter books. So the thing is, once people have written a bestseller, there's a large chance that they'll keep writing bestsellers, but not necessarily because the next book is of the same quality, but because they already get the street credit. Everybody's like, oh, I read this book by them, so this must be as good. Sometimes that book is extremely disappointing, but it still gets a label bestseller because everyone ran to the shop or online to get the book the moment it got out. So also look into that. Like, do you actually, like the people you look up to, do you love all their stuff, or do they have their good moments and their bad moments? Just look at that. Secondly, if you really want to compare yourself to someone who's written a bestseller or more, think about how long it took for them to write that first book, that first really good book, that book that became a bestseller. Like maybe they've got a million drafts in a drawer somewhere that nobody ever wanted to read, that got rejected consistently. Everybody seems to think that J.K. Rowling became a billionaire on the spot, and that's just not true. That's just not the case. She worked really, really, really hard. She was rejected many, many times. And yes, then she hit the jackpot, but she put in the work. So think about that as well. Like look into that as well. So Joanna Penn, like I'm a huge fan of her, especially this is one of my favorite books of her. So it's the Successful Author Mindset. And Joanna Penn talks a lot about comparison. She's written a lot about it. I think she'll start some blog posts on it, and I'm sure at least one episode on the Creative Pen podcast is on it as well. So she talks what she does in this book, and she has all these. She has all these things that can, that a writer can struggle with, like mindset issues. And what she does is she states the issue and then she gives an antidote, which is really useful, I'd say. And it's a really small book, so if you pick it up, you'll be through it, and it's really, really, really useful. So she talks, obviously, she talks about comparisonitis as well. And the antidote for her, she talks about like, okay, can we reframe comparisonitis, because as I said, like comparing yourself is not necessarily a bad thing. Can we reframe this comparisonitis into something more useful? So she has two suggestions. I'll read them out to you. So she says, so let's try to reframe comparisonitis and the edge of jealousy into something that can actually help us become better writers. So she suggests, if you find someone who triggers that feeling, research that author's background, read their book or their books. How long have they been writing? What did they do to get to where they are? How can you emulate them and use their example to further your own craft and author career? So as I just said, look into their process. Like how did they get? How did they get where they are now? How did they get to the point where you want to be? Because that's the thing. You're comparing yourself. You're comparing yourself to someone who's already made it. How did they get there? And another point, she said, so then she goes on, she said, you could even turn what you learn into a blog post, a journal entry, add items to your to-do list. So she actually suggests you can actually break it down and see, okay, this is what they did. Can I take the same steps? And then she said, and this is a really, really, really interesting way of reframing comparisonitis into something useful. She says, if I read a book by an author I have been jealous of and I like it, I'll always promote it to my own audience in the ultimate reversal of jealousy. Celebrate the success of other authors and it will make you a happier writer, plus it will build your network over time. I think this is a really interesting way of doing that. And like it made me think of, I talked about this before, I'm a huge fan of Cassandra Clare, and one of my beta readers says that the mistakes that Cassandra Clare makes in her writing, I don't make them in my writing. And I did, and I told you, I think I said so in a previous video, is that I am critical of Cassandra Clare's writing style. That, for example, all the love, it's multiple point of view, and all the love interests are described in the exact same way, which doesn't really work for me, because if you write multiple point of views, it's important that, I always suggest to my clients that if you write multiple point of views, you don't need to state who is the person. That the reader should know just from the writing, just from what the point of view is noticing around them, who the person is they're looking through the eyes of. So I'm very critical of that. But I will never talk about Cassandra Clare without also telling everyone what I love about her. And she has this most engaging world. Like, she created an amazing world, and I'm not looking forward to the day that she's done. Like, these books, these are one of the few books that I buy the day they come out. And then I just block about 24 hours, and they are big books, like her latest ones. They're all like 700 pages. I take these 24 hours and I read them all in one go. This is how much, I'm really a super fan of her, of the world that she created. So you can be critical, learn from that. Like, I learned a lot, the things that frustrate me in her writing, I use that to become a better writer. But it doesn't mean I should just dismiss her. Like, I really, really, really am a big fan of her work. So you can also celebrate authors while learning from them. That's what I'm trying to say here. So do that. Like so she calls it the ultimate reversal of jealousy, and I think it's really interesting. Like never, especially not if you like the work, don't trash it. Especially not like if you like it, look at it and see what you like, and can that help you to become a better writer? So and she has like further like earlier on she has this other suggestion. She says. Really, the only thing you can do, the only person you can compare yourself to is the writer you were 3 months ago or a year ago. So she suggests that you can keep track of your own achievements, whether you just sit down for them like once a year, or maybe you do that every quarter, maybe you do that every month. And I would say yes, that's a very good way of doing this, because if you look at your own progress and see how you are developing, that will help you to stop looking sideways at people who are doing in your like from your perspective, better. And if you do look sideways, and it will happen, if you do look sideways, also look, don't just research the books that they put out and how long it took them to get where they are, but also look at their personal lives and their circumstances. You know, please stop comparing yourself to people who are full-time writers. Like, don't beat yourself over the head if you don't have the daily word count that someone gets who has all day to write. If you're juggling your family and your full-time career, don't beat yourself up over it. If you want to compare yourself to yourself or to someone who has similar circumstance, and even then, don't beat yourself over the head if you're doing things differently, because everyone, that is why there are so many books on writers and how to best do it, because for every author it's different. Everyone has their own path, and you need to look at your own process to discover your own path and stop comparing yourself to everyone else to your own detriment. That's what I wanted to say today. I do hope you have a very productive day in which you are not comparing yourself to everyone around you. Okay, bye bye.